back to when you first learned about major and minor keys. How did you figure out the number of sharps in E major, or which key contains 5 flats? Perhaps you relied on a mnemonic, or you connected scales to finger patterns on the piano, or you memorized a rule. These are just a few common approaches, and they're all motivated by the idea, which was expressed recently by Melissa Hogue, that, quote, music fundamentals are of paramount importance to all music students, and at the same time, the most difficult of topics to teach well. Teaching fundamentals well was a concern shared by many music educators in the early to mid-20th century. In this video article, we'll examine a pedagogical device from 1946 that was invented by the music theorist Victor Zuckerkandl for the express purpose of learning major and minor keys. Aimed at high school-age students, this small toy is a set of triangular tiles that a student flips and shifts. Until now, it's only existed in an unpublished, hand-drawn sketch, but in this video, we're going to bring it to life. We'll first consider why Zuckerkandl invented this tool and how it compares to other pedagogical approaches at the time. Then, we'll demonstrate how it works and discuss its pedagogical and theoretical potential by pointing out uses that go beyond what Zuckerkandl describes in his sketch. We'd like to invite you to flip and shift along with us by using the printable template in the bibliography file. Zuckerkandl was an Austrian Jewish music theorist and philosopher who immigrated to the United States in 1939. He taught briefly at Wellesley College and at the New School in New York City, and then later for 16 years at St. John's College, Annapolis, where he established a music curriculum for liberal arts students. Here's a glimpse of Zuckerkandl in the classroom. Today, he's best known to English language readers for the 2-volume Sound and Symbol, and for The Sense of Music, a treatise based on his lecture notes at St. John's College. Although Zuckerkandl's ideas are often referenced by music theory specialists, he wrote almost exclusively for the general public. Indeed, for much of his career, Zuckerkandl's activities were directed at audiences with little to no formal musical training. In the 1920s, he worked as a conductor, and in the 30s as a music critic for newspapers and magazines. Toward the end of his life, he delivered numerous public lectures and wrote program notes. In all of these endeavors, he advocated for an approach to music that centered on active listener engagement. Sketches for his fundamentals toy are found in an unpublished book manuscript called The Educational Power of Music, which is held in the archives of St. John's College. Some of the book's contents resemble The Sense of Music, which was published 13 years later. But here, Zuckerkandl addresses teachers rather than students. And one of his first concerns is music fundamentals. He laments, for instance, that scales are, quote, mere abstractions, which are wasteful of time and energy and destructive of interest. Similarly, learning intervals from notation is confusing, as the 5-line staff, quote, fails to visualize the finer distinctions between major and minor, perfect, augmented, and diminished. As an alternative to these approaches, Zuckerkandl directs readers to the toy in Appendix A. Crucially, Zuckerkandl suggests, only once students have internalized these fundamentals will they be able to experience tones in musical contexts, to understand what he calls, quote, their tendential qualities and their unbalanced and balanced states. That is, to understand the principle of tonality.
Many educators shared Zuckerkandl's belief that a thorough understanding of music theoretical concepts was essential to developing an appreciation for Western tonal music. In the New School Music Handbook, a 1939 text for elementary and high school teachers, Peter Dickema and Hannah Cundiff explain that students must understand keys and scales so that they can later hear, quote, beautiful modulations. Their textbook, however, takes a traditional tack by relying on a combination of memorizing charts and rules in order to learn these topics. Others more rigorously sought to put the fun in fundamentals. During the early to mid-20th century, numerous patents for toys and games emerged, all promising to take the, quote, drudgery and labor out of music education. Dorothy Miller's musical checkerboard, for instance, encourages players to, quote, learn the names and positions of the lines and spaces of the musical staff without conscious mental effort. This game unfolds akin to checkers, but the players have the goal of collecting pieces marked with pitch names to form scales or chords, which they then place on a printed keyboard. In a similar spirit, Sigmund Spaeth, a musicologist turned TV and radio personality, took to educating the American population through entertainment. In his book, Music for Fun, Spaeth presents games and tricks with music that encourage readers to internalize musical notation and theoretical concepts. The musical number game, for example, has participants relate scale degrees to phone numbers to create melodies, which they could sing or play on an instrument. As with almost all musical games and inventions of this time, Spaeth's requires that an individual with musical training verify the results. Like these contemporaneous approaches, Zuckerkandl's device offers a playful and tactile approach to learning music fundamentals. However, it doesn't rely on mnemonics, the piano keyboard, or staff notation, and students can use it independently or with the aid of a teacher. As we'll see, it allows for the exploration of tonality beyond a fundamental level.
The device consists of 7 double-sided triangular tiles, each with a different letter name, C through B, and different colors on the 2 sides. Any 2 colors or even textures could be used, as long as they're different. The 7 tiles are arranged as a major scale with scale degrees 1, 2, and 3 on the top row, and 4, 5, 6, and 7 on the bottom row, creating a trapezoid. The top left tile represents a major tonic. The default arrangement is C major, with all tiles showing the same color. All the student needs to remember is the ordering of letter names on the trapezoid. The device can also represent minor keys. In this case, the tile that is second from the right in the lower row is tonic. The default arrangement organizes intervals neatly. Major seconds and major thirds are always between same row tiles. Minor seconds and minor thirds are always between opposite row tiles, and the only tritone in a diatonic scale is always between the outermost tiles. Perfect fourths and fifths create a zigzag pattern across rows. Rating left to right produces the order of sharps, and rating right to left is the order of flats. Zuckerkandl explains that the device can answer 2 types of questions: what signature belongs to a given key, and what key belongs to a given signature. Let's take an example of the first type of question. What is the key signature of E major? We start from C major and move the tiles so that E appears in the tonic position. This means shifting 4 tiles from the left to the right and flipping them to maintain the trapezoid shape. Now they're the alternate color. Because they are to the right of the new tonic, they are sharper, and thus E major has 4 sharps: F, C, G, and D. Let's try an example of the second type of question. Which key has 5 flats? We first count 5 tiles from right to left in zigzag, starting with B. The key must have the flats B, E, A, D, and G in its signature. We then shift these 5 tiles from right to left, flip them, and find the whole set upside down. Let's flip it one more time to put it in the proper trapezoidal shape. Now the D tile is in the major tonic position, and the B tile is in the minor tonic position. Thus, there are 2 keys with 5 flats, D flat major and B flat minor. Notice that the 5 tiles on the left, the flats, are a different color than the 2 on the right, which are naturals. Notably, the tiles do not represent specific pitches, but rather show generalized sharpness or flatness. For example, the configuration with the D tile as major tonic stands for D flat major, as we've seen, but it could also stand for D major with the 2 tiles to the right as sharps.
Before examining some further uses for this device, we note that Zuckerkandl's tonality toy interacts with broader pedagogical developments in the 20th century. Specifically, it falls into a category of learning aids called manipulatives, which use the physical manipulation of concrete objects to illustrate abstract concepts for students. A well-known manipulative type is Dean's blocks, which are commonly employed in elementary math classrooms to teach base 10 arithmetic. The underlying principle of manipulatives originates from the theories of developmental psychologists Jean Piaget and Jerome S. Bruner. Bruner suggests that students pass through 3 phases of cognition on their way to understanding a concept. First concrete, then symbolic, and finally abstract. By illustrating abstract concepts via a tangible object, manipulatives help to bridge the gap between concrete thinking and symbolic or abstract thinking. Numerous studies have examined the effectiveness of manipulatives in math classrooms. Their results suggest that concrete manipulatives are more effective than virtual ones for teaching abstract concepts, but any manipulatives are more effective than none. Studies on manipulatives also address prominent topics in embodied cognition, suggesting that the degree of perceptual richness and the affordances of manipulatives designs lead to different cognitive processes in students. Zuckerkandl's key signature toy bridges these areas of research, connecting music theory with embodied cognition for learners of music fundamentals. As we've seen, the tiles map specific intervals and scale degrees onto specific locations, and by flipping and shifting tiles, students tangibly interact with changing pitches in different keys. Notably, this is a largely self-correcting learning aid. Once a student knows the default trapezoidal position, they can work independently, exploring key change transformations and the properties of the diatonic system. Further, Zuckerkandl's toy has several pedagogical affordances that he doesn't explicitly state. A teacher can, for instance, introduce accidentals by asking the students to arrange the device starting from a letter name other than C. Each new accidental in a key signature is revealed through the changing colors of the tiles. Such changes can then be connected to scale finger patterns on keyboard-based instruments, since a newly flipped tile always corresponds to the next note to be raised or lowered on the instrument. Students may also gain understanding of more advanced theoretical concepts such as modulation by exploring the device on their own. For example, moving between any two major keys via flipping and shifting tiles brings to life Zuckerkandl's suggestion that scale degrees are dynamic musical objects, which begins to map the way that modulation works in real music. In contrast, moving between a major key and its relative minor involves a reorientation of scale degrees without shifting tiles, thus reinforcing different scale degree functions for identical pitch class content. Moving between a major tonic and its parallel minor always involves shifting the same trapezoidal segment, that is, scale degrees 3, 6, and 7. This can help to reinforce the similarities and differences between parallel keys. More distant modulations require shifting a greater number of tiles, which reinforces the notion of key distance through few versus many accidentals and flats versus sharps. For instance, the introduction of one sharp, or modulation from C major to G major, corresponds to moving one tile rightward, while the introduction of 6 flats, or a modulation from C major to G flat major, corresponds to 6 leftward moving tiles. Finally, a student who has internalized major or minor keys and their signatures can move between any two keys, major or minor. Since the device only has 7 distinct arrangements, students can gain familiarity with the notion of generic pitches, pitch classes, and keys.
Like all manipulatives, Zuckerkandl's toy is meant to be a temporary learning aid. As Zuckerkandl writes, quote, "After some time of using the toy, the high school music student will not have to use it any longer. Let every high school music student have it beside them, and there will not be any more worries in college about keys and signatures." Now, to our knowledge, Zuckerkandl's toy wasn't put into widespread use, and we can't guarantee that it will erase all worries about keys and signatures. But we found that it is a creative and even a fun way to explore intervals, scale degrees, modulations, and more. We hope you'll try it yourself.